Episode 55 of the
56,
Interpretation
you
Station
idiot.
is Call to Old Order. Welcome, everybody, to this, what is going to be a historic episode today. I don't use that word lightly, I'm sure you know if you've been following me long enough. Yes, today we are going to be covering almost all the languages that I vaguely have at my disposal in this special episode. If you've been following the group, the LinkedIn group, you'll have seen it a few days ago. I posted a statement. Well, I posted several statements. I'd actually been working in a meeting at the UN in the Human Rights Council, and it was the Universal Periodic Review of Mozambique. And so there were various countries, after they'd done their presentation, there were various countries then making statements in response. And we pretty much got the whole gamut of languages. You see, there were statements from French, Spanish, Russian, and then also there was Portuguese. Obviously, Mozambique being a Portuguese a Lusophone country, Arabic as well. There was Chinese too, but I don't know any Chinese, so I can't help you there. And so, yeah, I had the idea on the group, so I put up annotated breakdowns, as I do, of a statement by, I think, one from Senegal, one from Paraguay, one from Russia, and then I thought I'd give it a bash. I'd try what I know, of Portuguese, do one of those, and even I thought, what the hell? I went with the Arabic. My first ever attempt at something from Arabic. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm just going to sort of take you through. Well, I'm going to take you through the French, Spanish, Russian, being pretty confident of what I'm saying, and then I'm also going to just take you through also what I did from the Portuguese and Arabic. Now you can fast forward to the languages, obviously, that are most relevant to you, but I promise you that even if you don't speak any Portuguese or Arabic, I'm sure I've found a couple of nuggets that are going to be good. I mean, if you're interpreting into English, I think I guarantee that there are a couple of things, useful things that there are in those statements as well. Anyway, you'll be the judges, as they say. Okay, so what we're going to start then with the French, and the French one I took was by Senegal. Okay, so here we go. So this is the first thing I highlighted was souhaite la bienvenue. So you can just synthesize that into just saying welcomes. You could say wishes a warm welcome, but just as easy to say welcomes, really. Okay, la République sœur du Mozambique. Now, a solution I use here whenever they talk about la République sœur or République frère, I tend to say I use kindred. It covers both. You could say, it's easy enough with the République frère. You say the fraternal republic. But what do you say for République sœur, the sister republic? So what I do is I just use kindred for both, and that covers that captures the meaning perfectly, I find. I got that off. You know who uses that phrase a lot? I was reading Winston Churchill's memoirs, and he talks a lot about our kindred countries, and I thought, yes, that's the best word. That's the best, quickest solution. Okay, le rapport circonstancié. So that just means a detailed report, in-depth report. I haven't seen that word that much in my time. I must admit, I had to look it up actually. Okay, le Sénégal note pour son félicité, so it just is pleased to note. Here I bracketed le processus because throughout the development of this report processes, we can sort of skip it. Un gage d'inclusivité, okay, that's a guarantee. And then at the end of this paragraph, we have à l'issue du deuxième cycle. And I give you two solutions, one lower register, one a higher register. The most basic one is, at the end of, you can say following, at the end of the second cycle, following the second cycle. But also you have the higher register, of which would be pursuant to the second cycle. Again, à cet égard, take it or leave it. Depends on how much pressure you're under. Salue les efforts, just welcomes the commendable efforts, or applauds rather, the commendable efforts. That's a good word for appréciable. The noteworthy efforts is another alternative, perhaps, for that. Of the Mozambican government, visant à renforcer. Again, visant, sort of redundant, just to bolster their legal institutional framework. And then il en est de même des mesures. So in English, we would say the same goes for, the same applies to. And again, this visant, often in French, when they say visant à, it's again, it's sort of redundant. You can skip it in English. If you want to reflect, you can say aimed at, geared towards, bolstering. But often, as I say, it's redundant. This is an important organization to know, l'Organisation Internationale du Travail, and you'll hear it, certainly here in Europe, you hear it referred to a lot, the l'OIT. It's an important organization, one of the Geneva organizations, so that's the International Labour Organization, the ILO. And then again, l'architecture en matière de droits de l'homme. So again, you can just say the human rights architecture. You don't need to reflect that. You don't need to render that en matière de. Okay, so here have I taken a bit of a leap here? Processus dynamique et perfectible. So I mean, the idea is it's always changing. It's always, ideally improving. But I thought so evolving. They often talk about evolving processes. Of evolving documents, sometimes they talk about, so that changes over time. Okay, and then they get to the recommendation section. So whenever you're in the UPR, this is always how it works. They begin by welcoming the delegation, patting them on the back for all the good stuff they've done, and at the end, they sort of make a couple of recommendations on what they could do better. And so it's important. Okay, this is an important document here, Le Pacte International. So whenever you hear the Pacte, either in French or Spanish, the chances are it's going to go into the covenant, certainly when it comes to human rights issues. So this is the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the ECESR. I know that that acronym might seem a bit of a mouthful itself. But anyway, that's what we refer to the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and that goes often hand in hand with another covenant, which is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I say this many times, so remember those two as different packages. You've got economic, social and cultural rights on the one hand, civil and political on the other. Okay, then this next recommendation, again, accélérer le processus d'adoption. I think you can skip the processus. You can just say accelerate adoption, if you are under pressure. La traite des personnes. That's an important concept to know. Okay, that's human trafficking. Make sure you know that. And here, right at the end, à lui accorder tout l'appui nécessaire. So I give you again two words here, one slightly lower register, one slightly higher. Provide, or if you want that added nuance, to afford them the necessary support. Okay, so that is the French language one. So now we're going to move on to Spanish language. And this one was by Paraguay. So let's take you through this one. Okay, saluda a la distinguida delegación. So again, they're welcoming. Every country that comes up is going to more or less start with the same formulas. So you do welcoming. So you want to maybe try and change just to make your own life a bit more interesting. Wishes a warm welcome. Cordially greets. Sometimes when I'm really just bored and want to say something different, cordially greets, welcomes, whatever. Y agradece la presentación de su informe. Obviously, in English, you have to add an object here when you thank. You can't just thank the presentation of the report, right? We thank them for the presentation of the report. Or you could say, we are grateful for the presentation of the report. Then here, invitación abierta y permanente. So I like with permanente, 9 times out of 10, it's standing is better than permanent. So again, it's a standing invitation here to the special procedures. And you have here, so this is a whole package here. I give you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Human Rights Council special procedures. Okay, the special procedures, that's an important concept. It covers all these sort of special rapporteurs who go and visit various countries. They are very, those special rapporteurs have very specific mandates. Just to give you an example, you've got the Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression, Special Rapporteur on the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and association, Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. So that's what special procedures refers to. Okay, and then coming back here, órganos de, and then just to note here, y por qué in this whole paragraph, as I say here, put an asterisk here, refers back to congratulamos. So okay, so Paraguay is congratulating Mozambique both for keeping the standing invitation open and for doing this next bit. Haya presentado satisfactoriamente informes. So it's just it's make sure you're just following the thread of the sentence, as it were. Okay, órganos de tratados, that's the treaty bodies. Para su debido examen, in English we probably say for their due consideration. Okay, we alentamos al gobierno de Mozambique. Okay, so I say we urge them or we encourage. Again, by this time we all know we're talking about Mozambique. We all know which government they're referring to, so you could really just drop the de Mozambique. Tendientes, again, is one of those sort of redundant words that you can more or less skip going into English. Personas con albinismo, persons with albinism. That is the sort of politically correct way of calling them. And then again here, another big package here, the International Human Rights Treaties. I'll give you the 1, 2, 3, 4. Que aún tiene pendiente. So it's good to have a couple of solutions for this pendiente, so I give you, which are still pending or still outstanding. And again, we're coming back around. A lot of these things you see get repeated over and over again from one country to the next. Talking again about the OIT. So in Spanish, the acronym is OIT. Like in French, it's OIT. La Organización Internacional de Trabajo. So again, that's the ILO. And by the way, this is a very important ILO convention. If ever you're sort of coming across, if you're having to deal with anything to do with the ILO, this convention 189, it's one of the ones that gets referenced most frequently. And then, so again, we're into the recommendations here. So, retirar las reservas, that's an important little set phrase, withdraw reservations from a treaty, from signing a convention, from a treaty. That's the sort of collocation you want to know, withdraw reservations. I guess you could perhaps lift reservations as well, maybe. Okay, autonomía presupuestaria. It's important, like another important word. The budgetary autonomía, you could say autonomy or independence, I think either or. I've given you here funcionamiento efectivo. I think perhaps operation sounds a little better than functioning in English. And then this is the National Human Rights Commission they refer to. And then llevar a cabo su misión de manera efectiva. So I give you sort of the slightly lower register one to just carry out their mission, or a higher register one like to discharge a mission, or they can talk about officials discharging their mandate. Again here, mecanismo nacional permanente, so I've given you standing mechanism just to remind you. And what's this mechanism for? It's for informe y seguimiento de las recomendaciones. So it's for reporting and follow-up to recomendaciones in materia de, again, you can just say basically human rights recommendations in the field of human rights or whatever. Okay, so that is the Spanish for you. Okay, so now we shall move on. We shall now move on to the next text, which I'll take you now. In fact, what I'll do is I'll take you to the Portuguese now, because that sort of follows on a bit from the Spanish. So there's just a couple of quick things then. So this, this was just a bit of a whim. I did this on a bit of a whim. I thought, why not? As I say, I can decipher Portuguese pretty well, and I thought it might be an interesting thing to do. So this is what I sort of took from this statement. It was by Portugal. Okay, and so you'll have to excuse my pronunciation when doing some of these because I don't really speak Portuguese. But what I can say, okay, this opening sentence here, the word order I find interesting. É com satisfação que Portugal dá as boas-vindas a. So I presume this is quite a Portuguese style thing. And obviously, I think when you want to go into English, okay, so I put here, Portugal is pleased to welcome. From my knowledge of other languages, and you have the syntactic differences, obviously, I don't know, when you're working from Russian, the key is not to get distracted, not to be too wed to the syntax of the original, and just say try and keep the English as natural sounding as possible. So in this case, I think you just want to say rather than going, it is with pleasure that Portugal welcomes the delegation of Mozambique, which really sounds a bit too much. Just say Portugal is pleased to welcome. Okay, Códigos Penal y de Proceso Penal. So I thought this was interesting because I certainly know from Spanish and from French that when you hear that penal, there is a temptation just to go with a cognate, penal codes or penal procedure. No, you want criminal. These are really, it's much better to say criminal and criminal procedural codes, okay? Escolaridad obligatoria. Okay, so mandatory schooling, maybe compulsory schooling. I think mandatory is probably the best. Under law, you know, that's the sort of adjective we tend to use most often. Mandatory schooling. Okay, set phrase here. I mean, this is like similar in Spanish. Vemos con profunda preocupación. Again, forgive me for the pronunciation. We know it with deep concern. Now, this was the nugget I was talking about in the introduction. This word here, encoer do espacio cívico. Okay, when they talk about civic space, and this is often something that delegations will lament, how the civic space is shrinking. They talk about that all the time in all the languages, okay? So that's a really good collocation to know. I guess in Spanish it would be encoger, espacio cívico. So just remember that. That was my nugget in this statement. Okay, this then moving down here, I gave you IDPs, pessoas deslocadas, internally displaced persons, right? You can just go straight into the acronym with that. Responsáveis por violações de direitos humanos. Okay, so again, there's similar wording to what they would have in Spanish or in French. Les responsables pour violation. Anyway, it's not the responsibles. Make sure you don't say that. It's the perpetrators. That's the mot juste that you're after, the perpetrators, and having them. You wouldn't say in English that you don't want them responsibilized. And again, this wording is very similar, I think, in French and Spanish. So you want them prosecuted. You want the perpetrators prosecuted. Just like they go the R and the R, responsables, responsabilizados. So yeah, in English you want P and P, perpetrators prosecuted. And a processo justo, or justo, however you pronounce it in Portuguese, due process. That's a very important little phrase to know. Here's another thing that will help you if you're working from Spanish. Okay, this PIDESC that they talk about here, that is the acronym for the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and it's the same acronym that they have in French and in Spanish. So, and it gets used, it does get used, okay, so it's worth knowing. I've given you here protocolo facultativo. It's always good, you want to know that word. They often talk about these protocols, they're always optional protocols, all right? They're not facultative protocols or anything like that, they're optional protocols. And then the final thing I give you here, this desaparecimentos forçados, enforced disappearance. It's not forced disappearance. Try and say the N, enforced disappearance. Again, same coming from French and Spanish. So I think there was a couple of good things in that Portuguese for you, I think. Okay, let's go to the Russian. Okay, so for all you Russian speakers, положительно оцениваем. We just say welcome. We don't have to say welcome positively or anything like that. Just we welcome, and then okay, присоединение Мозамбика к конвенции. So when you talk about a convention, you accede to a convention. All right, more often than not. So as I say, accession. You could say maybe we welcome Mozambique signing up to the convention. But I think accession is certainly the best solution there. Invalidov. Okay, so here's one of those rare cases where in Russian you've got one word, but English you have to say three. You've got to really say the three word, persons with disabilities. Not much in the way of shortcuts there. As I say, I've said it many times, I try and avoid PWDs, okay? And then we have again fakultatywny protocol, the optional protocol. Knie, thereto. These little words can often be a good shortcut. They can get you out of trouble. Thereto, thereby, therefrom. Okay, so it's important to be able to use them skillfully. Konwencja przeciw pыток is the Convention Against Torture, and that's often referred to as the CAT. Okay, укрепление национального потенциала. So this perhaps the most classic collocation actually is building, when you talk about capacities, you build capacities. Always talking about capacity building, but you can also bolster the capacities as well. В правозащитной сфере. So правозащитная as an adjective, it's just human rights. Okay, I know that was something I struggled with in my early days of my career, but you just when that's used as an adjective, правозащитная сфера, it's just human right, means human rights, the human rights sphere. Okay, с тревогой констатируем. So we note with concern is the best. We're troubled to note. Perhaps you could do that. And then here, okay, неуклонный рост числа VPL. Okay, so I put here the steady rise in the number of IDPs. VPL is an IDP. That's a very important acronym to know. That will just be sprung upon you, and you need to know it. And then later on, I came up with perhaps a slightly better solution than the steady rise. I said the ever-growing number of IDPs. Okay. So I think either or is good, but I quite like that second solution I came up with, the ever-growing number. IGIL is, of course, ISIS or ISIL, whatever you prefer. Неотложная помощь жертвам, so I would say urgent, to provide urgent help, immediate help to the victims of terrorism. Предусмотрит, the safest thing to go with предусмотрит is like to provide for something. You can say to envisage, to envision, but I think the safest bet is to provide for here additional financing for addressing the pressing problems of the affected population, the pressing, maybe the burning problems. Again, the most urgent problems. If you've said urgent here before, you probably want a different adjective just to shake things up a little bit. Okay, принимая в внимание прогресс. Quickest way of doing that, I think, is in view of progress, or given progress in. В деле, again, is what, well, I haven't put it here, but just, I suppose in French, it's en matière de and all that, so one of those things. It's slightly redundant. You can just say in view of progress in ensuring равенство между мужчинами и женщинами. Here you can just say gender equality. You don't need to have equality between men and women. It's just quicker to say gender equality, and it's a perfectly legitimate solution. Okay, руководящие посты. You've got two possible solutions here: senior posts or decision-making posts. This is again an issue that's important at the UN, talking about getting women promoted to decision-making positions, posts, whatever. And then создание благоприятных условий. Conducive is 9 times out of 10 the solution I go for there, creating conducive conditions. I suppose you could say creating propitious conditions. I think that works as well. Okay, so that's the Russian done for you. That means all we've got left, therefore, is the old Arabic version. Here we go. So I promise, just stay to the end, stay at the end. Now, there's a couple of things that you'll like, I'm sure, okay, from this. For all your Arabic viewers, whoever's watching this, just to explain what I gave you here. So and you'll definitely have to forgive my pronunciation here. Okay, so this was actually, which country was it? It was a statement by Iraq, okay. And so because I haven't, you Arabic speakers, I don't know how much you've watched my other shows, so but I don't know if you're quite as au fait with some of the terminology that I encounter in my work. So just let me take you through this. Okay, so they talk about في جولة الثالثة. So these UPRs, the Universal Periodic Reviews, they come in cycles, and there I give you the full the full name. That's what it is in Arabic. الاستعراض الدوري الشامل. So that's the Universal Periodic Review, which we can of course refer to as just simply the UPR, the third cycle of the UPR. And this is again, it's a classic sort of formulaic, these opening paragraphs as they are in the other languages. وتقدر الجهود المبذولة فيه, which is basically just we commend their efforts to, or whatever it may be, to prepare and present the report. Again, very formulaic here. This is what in the other languages. براح الحوار البناء, in a spirit of constructive dialogue. They basically say, it's sort of saying, I'm about to criticize you, but it's all in the spirit of fair play, in the spirit of constructive dialogue. And like to reiterate what I said before about what you do to conventions, if you want to sort of you want to accede to conventions, that's the best collocation to go for. Okay, تصديق على الاتفاقية. To accede to, again, or to sign up to. Again, here I emphasize, okay, الأشخاص من الاختفاء القسري. So you want really, this is to do the protection of all persons, protecting them from enforced disappearance. So again, it's you would say persons as opposed to people. That's why I've put that. It's very bureaucratic, this is a very bureaucratic style, and this is called enforced disappearance, as I say, not forced, enforced. Then I give you a couple of options here for تقفيف الجهود, to intensify or to step up. That's a classic collocations. And this is an important collocation that might come in useful to anyone, to all the speakers of the other languages who are still watching. Okay, تصدي الفقر, poverty. So the collocation you want with poverty is to eradicate poverty. Okay, you can say eliminate poverty, but that's what I think all of the conventions, whenever they talk about dealing with poverty, it tends to be eradicate poverty. I hope did I pronounce that word right? This one here, the FKR word. Did I pronounce it right? Okay, and المناطق الريفية, that would be the rural areas, I think is the safest option there. Again, this is just repeating maybe what I said for a couple of the other statements. دعوة دائمة, a standing invitation to, well, here it is. Again, the special procedures, al-ijra'at al-khassa, that's what they call them in Arabic. So the special standing invitation to special procedures. So again, this is vocab. These are formulas that they use over and over again. The delegations, and then finally. Okay, توقيع اتفاق شامل. So the best word here, with شامل, that idea is that a comprehensive agreement. Okay, that's the best sort of adjective to reflect that notion. Okay, so I hope you've learned a couple of new things. I'd be fascinated to know in the comments, what do you think of my Arabic page? Did you learn anything? Have I managed to teach you anything from that? Would you like me to do another one? It's all just a bit of fun until actually someone joins me. If anyone of you guys speaking Arabic want to come on board the interpretation station and do episodes like this for me from Arabic into English or vice versa, just contact me, send me an email, whatever. Okay, until then, I might do some of these. They're a bit of fun for me as well. Okay, I hope that was useful for you. Let me know what you think, as I say, in the comments if you enjoyed the episode. Smash the thumbs up button, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm going to just leave you to it with that. Wish you all a good weekend and see you all soon. So, episode 55 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.